This, just so that you guys know, right? This site was set up to trip you up. I put those sycamore trees there. Okay, they're not really there. I put those sycamore trees there. And I pick sycamore trees because they're freaking big. And I know perfectly well that there's this big shadow that's going to be cast over major parts of your site. I oriented that site so that your nice views are, guess which way? Mountains over here, city over there. The site is rotated this way, right? Kind of at a 45 degree. So north is that way, right? So there's also mountains that way, which is directly east. I can show you where the site is. Have you guys ever gone up hiking at the top of Mills?
No.
To the Claremont Wilderness, some of you? Claremont Wilderness?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there. It's the road that where the parking lot is. It's the road that turns off and goes up to Baldy. There's really a very nice Foster Jackson Rhodes house, little concrete house that's there. Okay, so just so that you guys know, the site is purposely set up to trip you guys up. So you guys have to make decisions and you have to make discoveries about what do I do. So to answer this young lady's question, my cat, right, the curious one. I would say that what I would do if I were you guys is I would look at screening devices, right? And then I would see how much can you see through a screening wall, right? Are there screening devices that allow you to see through it? Are there screening devices that are retractable? I mean, we're cheap, right? They built this building and they thought, oh, you guys got a great view, right? Oh my God, let's put a projector up there and a screen over here, and then we'll put blinds on everything. Well, the bottom line is that if I don't want to be opening and closing those blinds 4 or 5 times a week, or maybe 10 times a week, that I'm pretty much going to leave them closed all the time, right? Instead of, they could have spent a little bit of extra money and put them all on a little button to where they go, and they all come up at once. But they didn't, so they stay down and the view's gone. So some of the things that you might think about is there a perforated blind that you can bring up and down? Are there perforated blinds that you can see through? You went to the DeYoung, didn't you? Up in San Francisco? Yeah. You did. Yeah, the DeYoung is fully perforated. I have an article for you guys to read about perforated panels in architecture. Those of you that are in the Grasshopper class are going to be doing experiments with perforation patterns and stuff that you can apply to your buildings, and you can share that with the other folks that if you're nice to them, maybe they'll take you down and help you laser cut the thing. Okay, so back to this thing. So blind over in here. Let me ask a second question. So if I have and again, there is no one right answer to any of this. I'm showing you a potential strategy. That strategy of keeping the building compact is another strategy. Which one works better? I don't know. Which one is more appropriate for the conditions on the site? I don't know. That's up to you to discover. But let's just for a moment talk about what you're going to be reading about over the weekend, which is passive cooling. So we know that we want to have a southern exposure with lots of windows so that the sun can come in and heat up an area inside of that building. But buildings have rooms inside of them, don't they? And so this room might have, one way to approach this thing might be to put a corridor or something here and then have the rooms kind of off of that corridor, right? So if we do that, then do all the rooms pretty much have access to the sun? They do. What happens if you do a different design where you have rooms here and rooms up here and you put a corridor kind of in between them? What happens if you have that design? Do any of these rooms or the back of this room, do they get any of the sun? that causes a problem, right? Now, there are ways to migrate heat from one area to another, right? So what, let me ask a question. Do you guys, do any of you remember from the reading, what were the 3 types of passive solar systems? Nope.
Like isolated heat.
There's one. Isolated heat gain. What's another one? Direct heat gain. And indirect heat gain. Okay. The 2 that you're most likely to be using are going to be direct gain and isolated gain. It's up to you. You can use an indirect gain. Okay. So, all right. So we've talked about one scenario is elongation and east-west. We talked about placing a garage to the east or to the west and putting a patio with a vertical blind or louver to the one side. That's another option too, Natalie, is if you have louvers that are operable, right, like that, and you want to see the lights, you just turn them to where they're facing in this direction, right? And when you want to block the sun, you turn them so that they're facing a different direction. If you guys do a little bit of research on the Kaufman house in Palm Springs, you'll see that it has a lanai on the 2nd story, and Richard Neutra put aluminum louvers across the entire western side of that thing that are adjustable. I got to actually unscrew the hinge and move them. It's kind of cool. Of course, I was barefoot because you weren't allowed to wear shoes in the house. Yeah. Okay, so cross ventilation is another issue that you guys are going to be reading about. Yes?
Can you spell that? The house?
Kaufman?
Yeah.
Sure. It's Kaufman. Have you ever heard of Falling Water?
Yeah.
You've heard of Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright?
Yeah.
That's the Kaufman residence in Pennsylvania. Right? The Kaufman residence in Palm Springs is the same family, but done by Richard Neutra. So cross ventilation. So here's another thing about the elongation east-west and the potential for cross ventilation. If I have windows along here, and then I have some windows back in here and maybe up high inside of these rooms, the wind can come through this thing and get out the other side. Right? But when I stack the rooms really deep, it becomes harder. Not impossible, but it becomes harder to cross-ventilate. Yes, if this is a big room and it's got doors and there's windows back here, the air is going to create a positive pressure here, and it'll eventually work its way out the back here. So there are different strategies for different things, okay? You can, if you want, elongate something and create, another piece that goes that way. That's an L shape, right? So how you deal with this exposure is different than how you deal with that exposure. All right? So I got a question. So let's say that I have an elongated space like that and I want to let sun into it. Right? What do I do? How many minutes am I at? Till what?
Till 12 minutes.
12 minutes. So let's say I want to let sunlight into this area back here, right? But it's nowhere near the south. What do I do? What? Skylight's one option. Can you control the light coming into a skylight?
Yeah, use it.
Solar tubes are not really going to give you solar radiation landing on a piece of thermal mass, right? Okay, so let's cut a section through here and take a look at a section that could work. Let's say that I have this flat roof and I've got a room here, right? What happens if I create a tall 2-story area here and I put windows here facing south and I have a chimney right here that's made out of concrete or brick or block? Can the sun get in and heat up that masonry? Yeah, so sectional quality right, is going to be another factor that you guys can consider. One of the interesting things is that your site slopes this way, right? So technically you could step the building down the hill and have multiple areas that let light into something that is facing east, that's facing north-south, is elongated in the north-south direction, which is what the opposite of elongating this way. Okay, what it looks like doesn't have to be a box. It doesn't have to be the guy that I work for, right? Brooks Cavan was one of my mentors. I always joked around with him later in life that his buildings always looked like this, because a lot of the buildings did look like that. His office building looked like that. The fire station we designed looked like that. A house that we designed looked like that. And it was designed that way so that the sun could get in and warm up an area. But, you know, it's kind of it's sort of a 70s-ish looking thing, right? It doesn't have to look like that. It could look, you know, more modern. It could be a series of warping planes. It doesn't matter. The concept is that one plane is higher than the other, and there's a window there that you can put an overhang on. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and stop the video.